So first, let me thank you for attending this webinar on the project management approach for achieving positive innovation outcomes. I'd like to start by briefly going over the outline of what will be reviewed today. As a way to set the stage, I present the scope of what typically is referred to as innovation, and we will look at the management challenges associated with managing these complex types of projects. And then we'll transition into descriptions and application of project management and other complementary disciplines as related to innovation projects. And finally, we will review some other important considerations and summarize the main messages from the presentation. So, webinar, we're going to review the underlying principles and components that make up innovation activities and methods. We're going to look at the enabling application of disciplined approaches for innovation, including project management and some related disciplines. And we're going to look at the importance and application to innovation projects of measurements and risk management. So innovation is often used in conjunction with or and sometimes identical to or even superior or subordinate to research and development. And it is often used to reflect a broader field of activities than typically associated with just research and development, such as processes and methods or other activities that generally lead to increased productivity or performance. So the definition of innovation is also itself evolving over time. As the nature of communication and global interaction changes, and as business and technology advances, and also as service-oriented organizations continue to interconnect to other organizations in unprecedented ways, innovation opportunities continue to emerge. And these areas may not have previously been considered and are often well outside the standard purview of research and development, and in some cases outside the purview of what would be traditionally seen as the project management role. So innovation refers to the use of new product, new process, or new organizational structures or methods that is completely new or vastly improved to the organization or entity that is doing that project. And it is inclusive of many activities, including process, research, application, and design. How one categorizes and organizes the work associated with the broadest definition of innovation, we don't want to just guess at. It is best captured in a well-established, internationally accepted framework documented in the Oslo Manual. And the Oslo Manual is a manual that's put out by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the Statistical Office of the European Communities. And it actually provides guidelines for collecting and interpreting innovation data, specifically the measurement of scientific and technological activities. So in its text, innovation is defined broadly, but it can encompass the use of products, services, process, methods, organization, relationships, and interconnections such as those that occur in logistics or distribution activities. So the key requirement, according to this text, to be categorized as an innovation is that it requires the use of something completely new or vastly improved to the organization or entity. So the manual defines four basic types of innovation: product, process, organization, and marketing. The manual also introduces the concept of diffusion in innovation, which is the manner in which an innovation proliferates to different organizations. So an organization that takes a new idea from another organization and implements it in its own organization has really participated in diffusing the innovation and can actually have been said to have innovative within its own organization. So an organization's involvement in its own R&D, even if it's developed in collaboration with others, generally would not expect other organizations to assume ownership of that R&D like an innovation project would. Indeed, the organization most likely would want to retain ownership of that new product or service as intellectual property to providing a competitive edge or future revenue for that organization. So innovation, there's an intent that activity is actually proliferated throughout other organizations. So now I want to add some fidelity around the concept by discussing types of innovation and get a little bit more down into the details of this. So as mentioned previously, the concept of innovation is often interpreted in different ways, and we rely on the Oslo Manual for our understanding of common innovation categories. The activities typically referred to in innovation, as we discussed, include developing new products, components, and materials. It also focuses on process innovation associated with efficiencies and effectiveness of activities. It can focus on organizational innovation associated with business practice, and it can focus on marketing innovation associated with placement of products or services, promotion, and/or pricing. So innovation projects can be large or small. They can be they're generally complex, and the complexity comes from basically the interconnections between processes across and between organizations, or even across and between departments within companies. So, for example, inventions and research and development can reach a point where if they are to achieve a level of value for an inventor or a researcher, they have to be promoted, marketed, and made visible to the world. And in order to do that, supply chains or lines of communications have to be established. Methods must be put in place to repeat the process and to actually recreate the outcome so that it can be marketed and sold. And the stakeholders will be, every process owner that new capability is going to touch, and any process that may receive sort of unintended consequences of the new implementation. So when I want to compare innovation with other kinds of activities so we can really get our minds around what we're going to capture in this category called innovation. So when comparing innovation to other types of projects, such as production or research and development, the identification and prioritization often comes into an organization in less traditional ways. So sources of innovation ideas often come from the open market, joint or crowdsourcing ventures, strategic alliances, or other non-traditional sources. This makes them different from other types of projects right from the start. For example, an idea may need to be pursued quickly if there are windows of opportunity for gaining a competitive advantage. And this ongoing input and assessment of new ideas is not typical of most organizations. Most of our organizations identify work that we're going to do at the very beginning of the year, the fiscal year or the annual year, and make decisions based on their strategic goals, and then fund those projects and monitor them through the year. But ideas coming through out of cycle like this usually have to wait for an appropriate evaluation time, which isn't ideal for innovation projects. So innovation needs to be assessed on more of an ad hoc, non-rigid cycle, and that makes them more challenging to manage, to address and to manage than other types of projects, which can come in through the traditional cycles. So as mentioned previously, the projects are typically complex in nature, and the level of engagement required to implement an innovation project really requires heavy communication throughout that project. So while R&D plays an important role in innovation, it is different than innovation. So while organizations engage in both research and development and innovation to enhance their competitive position in the marketplace, organizations also innovate to increase their performance, leading to more profits, to pursue a particular strategy, such as pursuing an altruistic venture, for example, or to achieve some other desired outcome. And innovation, although seen as outside the R&D specific environment, ultimately may be required to realize the full benefit of an R&D project. So in addition, certain innovation activities may slightly overlap the R&D realm. So if you're working on a process re-engineering or an industrial engineering project, there might be some R&D involved in that, and that overlap can be confusing sometimes.